Hello, hello, hello. Sorry for the chaotic morning, but you have to forgive me because it's freaking 8 a.m. So we're allowed to be still waking up, right? Okay, so hello, Newtown Radio. Today we have a special guest. I am so excited. So today we have Boss Bisstress, right? And we're gonna talk today about polyamory and the Kink Scene in New York, which is awesome because I don't have any idea about it. So I'm gonna ask so many questions because I am so curious. But yeah, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming at 8 a.m.
So early.
for my radio show to talk about this fascinating topic. But yeah, I want to let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay. Hi. I don't know where to look. I guess I should look at that thing.
At the YouTube camera, whatever you feel
All right.
comfortable.
I'm Boss Bisstress. Sometimes I go by Nico. I thought you were introducing me. Okay.
I can. Do you want? Do you want me?
Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
I
No
just feel like
problem.
sometimes it's easier. But I mean, I'm a human. I'm a person. I'm from New York. I've lived here my whole life. The longest I lived anywhere else was Seoul in 2012, which was also amazing, but was not involved really in that stuff there. But that's a different story. But anyway, I hold an MFA from Columbia University in creative writing.
In creative writing, that's
Creative
amazing. This is
writing,
what I'm
yeah.
doing right now. This is my degree.
Nice. Very cool. I'm a writer, poet, reader, thinker, weirdo. I host a writing circle that's also not super relevant right this second.
Everything is relevant.
Everything
you also
is
do tarot,
relevant.
right? You
I
also
read
do
tarot too, yeah.
If you need a tarot reading, you know where to go
Yes,
because I'm still a
exactly.
beginner. So
Yeah. When we were coming up with topics, I was like, maybe tarot? And I was like, you probably have had a million tarot readers on here.
no, I haven't. But as I said, because it's like a show for like people who are
Right.
coming to New York, like I realized that because we have so many topics to cover, I kind of like try to find which topic is gonna be like a little bit more relevant. Which again, I don't know. But because you mentioned that you're a tarot reader, like if you wanna connect,
Yeah.
all the links, those of you who are watching on YouTube, all the links are gonna be down below. So you're gonna have
Boss
their
Bisstress.
Instagram and all these platforms
Can
that
I just spell it for them anyway?
yeah, of course.
Okay, boss is spelled like regular boss, Boss. And then Bisstress is like mistress, except it has an extra S. So it's altogether 6 S's with the boss and the Bisstress. So BOSSBISSTRESS. And in theory, that's to have like a 6-figure salary, but that's like I'm not there yet. One day.
You're gonna be.
And yeah, hope so.
They're gonna be, right?
Thank you.
So yeah, let's dive into the topic because we have 1 hour and I have so many questions.
already
you guys.
flying.
I
Oh,
know,
God.
right? It's crazy.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so as I mentioned, the topic is polyamory and the kink scene in New York. But before we even start, if you can just talk a little bit about what polyamory is, just for the people who don't know.
It has a bunch of different names. You can call it polyamory. You can call it multiamory. You can call it ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy. You could call it swinging. That's like a different flavor of it. It can be all sorts of things. You could call it being single. You could call it being open. But it basically is just not being or not believing or espousing or having as a philosophy the idea that you have like one partner that, you only hook up with them, you're only romantically involved with them. And everyone does polyamory or ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy differently. There's no like one size fits all. So my version of poly might look completely different than the next poly guest you have on. So does that answer anything?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just so I'm curious, how do you if you say that there are different kinds and different types, like how do you maybe entering let's say a new relationship or something, and how do you know if you're on the same page or
Yeah, that's a great question. It's super confusing, and even though I've been in this scene almost a decade, I still also don't know all the answers around that. I don't know if anyone does. I think I'm in like 4 different poly book clubs at this moment in time.
you said book clubs?
Book clubs, yeah, for just poly books.
Wow.
In one of them right now, we're reading Polywise by Jessica Fern. Oh, yeah, Polywise, which is the sequel to, which you may have heard of, Polysecure, which is about polyamory and attachment theory. So like anxious avoidant and all those types of ways of being.
I love how all
Why is
my
that
guests
important?
always recommend
Oh
books.
yes,
I
books are
love
really
that.
important. Yeah. Reader, writer, thinker. But I don't know if this was the last book we read, but one of the books we read that I thought was really interesting in one of the book clubs was the Polyamory breakup book. I'm blanking on who the author is right now. And what was really interesting about that, there was like a whole chapter, or maybe it was a whole more than a chapter, about like a reason a lot of, or the our overarching theme of the reason why a lot of poly people break up is that they have different concepts or ideas about how they're doing polyamory. And they might think when they start, they're on the same page. Oh, we're both poly. This is easy. We got this. And then through exploration, they're like, well, my exact version of this is slightly different than yours. And it's causing some sort of tension or issue or whatever the thing is. So your answer is there really is no way. I mean, communicating, always communicating. Ideally, that's how any relationship is successful. So in a poly relationship would be similar vibes, but it is really tricky. You have like a framework. You just know like this person in theory believes that if someone hooks up with somebody else, it's not the end of the relationship. Or if someone likes someone
Okay.
else, it's not the end of the relationship.
Yeah, so while you were saying like different types, and kind of like the guidelines
Yeah.
of this specific relationship, I had a conversation with a guy, and he was actually telling me that so he has a girlfriend, and again, they're in like an open relationship, so they can date other people, but the rule is they can't be on dating apps. So it's
Interesting.
like if they meet somebody, that's
Right.
okay, but not like intentionally looking for something. So I guess that's what you mean by like different types and
Yeah,
different guidelines.
everyone. And that I think that's an interesting way of doing it. I haven't heard that exact one. I've heard some people say like they won't look for like more partners, like they have this, they're dating each other, they're dating one other person to it, whatever it is. I've heard people only like hook up with other people. I've heard people only go to play parties. I've heard people only play with people together. I've heard people can date people of the one gender, but not another, which, whatever. That has issues too. Not dating based on gender. Whatever, that's a different issue. But yeah, again, there's so many ways to do it. But I like that one. I mean, I don't know if I like it, but it's an interesting one to not be on dating apps.
Is it something that, well, I think I know the answer, but I just want to clarify. Like when you enter in a new relationship, is it something that comes up immediately? Or like
I
how do you even?
imagine, I don't think you would get to the point as a poly person or an ethically non-monogamous person. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. I mean, I've heard like stories of like, I'm not naming names obviously, but there's this one guy person I know who goes on the dating apps and like connects with these women, really beautiful women. And I mean, maybe there's guys too he connects with, but he doesn't tell them he's poly until they've already started talking. I think he doesn't meet up with them, but he just kind of like introduces them to the whole scene, which is problematic. I think it's not the best practice. Definitely not the best practice. So I think yes, it should come up. I'm not quite sure why it wouldn't, unless you're like trying to hide something. And
I mean, if
then
you're hiding it, you're kind of
right,
cheating, no? Like if the
yeah.
other
I mean, it
person
seems
doesn't know
weird.
you're in an
Yeah,
open
why would
relationship.
exactly? So yeah, I think it should definitely come up. If you're on a dating app, it probably says it. If it doesn't, that's already a red flag. Yeah, you don't just like surprise polyamory someone like, oh, we're poly now. We've been
I
poly.
know,
You just
right?
didn't know.
Yeah,
Like that
I
would be the
guess.
non-ethical part or the non-consensual part. So yeah, all parties should be aware of what's happening. Although also that can get tricky too, because some people might have a don't ask, don't tell kind of policy. But as long as everyone is on the same page about what's happening and honestly and openly communicating, there's a million ways to do everything.
I have a more like I guess personal questions just
Yeah.
coming from it, but mostly about how did you know that that's what you want to do, and how
Mm,
did you go into it? Like how does the shift happen?
it's a good question. Okay, I'm not going to share my long story because it has a lot of weird details and it's going to take a while. But we're in like it's like 2015 times. And I just like I'm gonna skip that part of the story. It's a whole long thing, but connect it. feel like I sort of have to give that story, but it's too complicated for right now. It's too complicated to go into that story right now of how I specifically got there. Too hard.
I mean, I wish we
Too
had.
hard.
I wish we
Yeah.
had more time.
It,
But
it takes like at least half an hour to tell that story.
oh,
It's too
damn.
long.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I got you.
It's a good story though, I swear.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone
Well,
asked me that in a speed
maybe
dating,
next time.
in a poly speed dating mixer kind of thing, and they were like, "How did your?" And it was like some really newbie guy. Not that it's a problem to be newbie, but this was like at a dating thing, speed dating, and I was just like, "Okay, you are not paying me. I'm not being paid to be here. Like this is dumb. I'm not gonna give you my whole story. I don't feel that way about you, but it just reminded me of that. Yeah, because we only had like
Gotcha.
4 minutes or something to talk. So
It's
that's-
okay. Well, next time I hope that we have a little bit more time to
Yeah.
dive into that. But okay, so we talked a little bit about that, which connects to the kink scene that I wanted to also talk to you about. Because again, if I'm thinking about people who are just coming to New York, it's not something that you usually find on like Meetup. Just generally, I feel.
I think you do these days. You can find
Yeah?
that. I don't even know anymore, but I think you can.
Okay, there you go.
Probably-
So
yeah, there's a poly picnic group. There are a couple poly picnic groups. Like Brooklyn Poly House, I think is one of them. Yeah, there, you can find a Meetup. If you type into Meetup Poly, you see what you get. You can,
okay, so
I might try to do that while we're talking right now.
so maybe we can talk a little bit about how to find the scene. So you
Yeah.
have the meetup, the Eventbrite, and how to look for them and where to find.
So there's a million ways, a bunch of different intersections, a bunch of different groups, types of things. And how do you know what's right for you? How did I know in my specific case? You kind of just have to try things out. And you don't have to do anything. But if you want to explore these things, these areas, these scenes, you kind of just have to dive in. Or you can just put a toe in. You could just go to one thing. It doesn't mean like you have to do this the rest of your life. You can just go to a party. You can just go to a mixer. You can just read a book. So when I just typed poly really quickly, there's something like Kinky AM weekly Saturday night after party, which I've never heard of them. That might be a gay guy one, but that was just like a quick one that popped up.
Okay, so there are options you can
it
just
is
type.
it is accessible, and if you're on Instagram, there's a million and one things of everything. Eventbrite mixers and things can be on there, but sometimes the parties can't be on there. It depends, because Eventbrite has like rules about like sex and things. But some parties do still post on Eventbrite. But something to keep in mind, some parties might say it's not a play party or like no sex happens here. This is not, but that's because they have to, because legally on Eventbrite.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can't always know what you're getting into necessarily or not getting into. You might think you're going to a party where sex is allowed, and then it's like just BDSM, right? Like just like whips and chains and things like that and power dynamics. Or you might think you're going to a mixer, but it's a mixer that turns into a play party. It's like, ideally, we would live in a world where everything is really clearly delineated and described, and that you know what you're doing and what you're going into. But because sometimes this stuff is like a little more underground, less so underground these days. We're here in bright 8 a.m. daylight talking about it. It's still a little not always super clear, but you just gotta try things out, explore, see what resonates, meet people, familiarize yourself. There's FetLife, which FETLIFE, which is not just in New York. It's like all over the world, and it's essentially a Facebook for kinky people, which is really chaotic. It's not necessarily a dating app. Like you could use it that way if you wanted to, or like find play partners. But there's a section just like how on Facebook for events, and people post a lot of events there. So you can find all sorts of things there. But there's also something called Munches, MUNCHES, which is just like meeting up to talk about things involving polyamory or kink, or usually kink. Sometimes a specific party will have a munch like a week before the party at a coffee shop or at a bar, and you can go, you can meet people, connect with people, you can see how you like the vibe, you can see all sorts of things. So there's FetLife, there's a lot of things are on Partyful nowadays. Everyone's on Partyful, PARTIFUL, but that's also not just for kink or play parties or polyamory. That's for
that's
everything.
just if you're hosting something, you can go
basically
to Partyful,
everything that exists in the world, poly and kink and BDSM, has some sort of intersection with that. I guess the only thing I can think of that is specifically for kink things would be FetLife if you went on there. But again, not again. I've been saying again a lot. I don't think I say that in real life, but in Radio Land, I say again a lot. Something to be careful with on FetLife is that like anyone can post anything. So this idea of you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. So someone might post like their gangbang they're having with like them and four guys, and like you might have no idea what's going on. Versus like something on Plura or like Partyful, you might, but anyone can post on Partyful too. Always be careful. Not that it's, I don't think kink is any, well, it's risk. There's a concept of like risk aware, consensual kink, and being aware of how well you know someone that you're playing with. And if you don't know someone as well, maybe you don't engage in riskier activities with them. Maybe you know them really well and you can do like more than the level of risk. Or maybe it's the opposite for you. Although I doubt it's probably not the opposite.
So what would be like the best way to, let's talk about
Start
safety.
a new person. Oh, or
Yeah.
safety? We're on safety.
Yeah, on safety.
I'm still trying to answer that first question. How you know, but okay. So safety. Again, this word again that I keep using, it's going to be person specific. I have one friend who like loves gangbangs, or I have a few friends that love gangbangs, and then I have friends who would never in a million years go to a gangbang, even though they go to play parties like every day of the weekend. So your one person's version of what feels safe for them might be very different than someone else's. I try to go to parties that have guardians, which are people who are like on specific shifts, who have like some sort of marker that there's like a light up wristband or like a sash or something that lights up usually so you can see them. That and anyone can go to talk to them if they feel weird or uncomfortable. And those people are also watching for consent violations, or if someone like touches someone without permission or consent. Everything is very consent driven. And if anything even seems like it's not consent driven, it's probably some form of consensual non-consent. Like those people probably know each other, worked it out beforehand. So you also don't want to interrupt anyone's scene. Let's say it's like your first party and you see something, you're like, oh my God, that person's that looks really not okay. They're not okay. They're crying. That's bad. I got to call someone. Right. That would be an instance where like maybe go talk to a guardian, because they would hopefully be able to explain to you it's probably okay. So parties that have guardians, I think are a good gauge. I mentioned like parties that have munches before, so you can meet people, talk to people. Nowadays, a lot of groups also have like WhatsApp threads or Discord or a group of this, a way to connect with people, either before the party or after you've gone to it for future parties. So connecting with people in the community so that you're not just like in an ether of like, where am I? Who are these people? What's happening? Hopefully people that you can get to know, have a community of people, because the community is a really important aspect of this.
Is there a way of knowing if there's guardian in a specific party?
Yeah, it usually says it on the event description. Yeah,
Okay.
It'll be like guardians throughout the night, blah, 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 something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, some parties have like a vetting process where like you have to give them like your real name or like a social media account or something like that.
To make sure you're like...
Yeah, people have like scene
legit.
names, like Boss Bisstress was like a scene name, or it's a bunch of different names. It's also my tarot name and my Instagram name. But yeah, so like vetting forms, sometimes you can't buy a ticket unless you do a vetting form. Some parties you have to say who referred you, like who's your friend, or you have to know specific people. Some parties they have to choose if they accept you or not based on like your vetting form. Guardians, some parties or some communities, groups have like a membership system where you pay to have a membership, and then you can get tickets, and then you can either like bring a friend, like one friend, or you can send specific invites to friends, and then they can buy tickets. So then that's kind of like a word of mouth kind of thing. So you can like, in theory, trust more. Of course, there's bad actors everywhere, and it could happen. There's consent violations in bars. There also probably are. There definitely are consent violations everywhere in the world, unfortunately, which is not good. Everything should be very consent driven, and so yeah. But consent is very, very important. And if you ever feel unsafe somewhere, you can always leave. Of course, you can talk to a guardian. You can email or message a producer of the party. after. You can go talk to them during. Some parties have security. You can go talk to security. Sometimes if a party's at like an established venue, the staff of the venue might be there. You could go talk to them. You also don't have to do anything. Like I said, you can just leave. You can post online about it after. You can investigate later. You can do whatever feels good for you. But like I said, there's different types of parties. Like I personally probably wouldn't want to go to a hotel party for some random guy in some area of New York that I haven't been lately. But I might be someone else's exact kink. Maybe they'll be like, oh my God, amazing. There's some guy having a party at, I don't know, 4 miles away from my house. I'm going to go. And, so there's, you investigate, you explore, you see what feels good for you, what doesn't, and tweak that based on your experiences.
Yeah, I would think that if for a person that's completely new to that and just want to explore, I think the mixers that you mentioned are the best way to start, to kind of just like know the community and not to jump immediately into something that you are completely unfamiliar with. I think that's
definitely at a party that like has a mixer could be a good way to do that. Or like workshops. A lot of places have workshops. You could do like a flogging workshop or like a power dynamics workshop, and you can learn more about those topics, and you don't even have to, do any play or anything like that. Not that you ever have to do anything ever. You can, sometimes people ask like, oh, do you have to play? Not at a safe or good party. That's something else that you can think about. Like if anyone ever is making you do something, or is like, you have to take your clothes off here, or you have to do that, or you have like, that's a red flag. Like,
okay,
that's not, you don't, consent, always do what feels good for you.
Technically you can come to a party just to like
hang
explore.
out,
You don't have to engage in anything.
Yeah, totally, 100%. That's what a lot of people do. A lot of people just go to talk, be part of their community, because it really is a community. Usually parties are on like weekends, so like Friday, Saturday, sometimes daytime on the weekends. Although there probably is a party happening every day of the week, but those tend to be like smaller, more private things. So consent, mixers, workshops, like something like poly cocktails is like once a month at the Delancey. So anything that's at like a public bar can be a good mixer option. And just meeting people, talking to people. But I also don't necessarily recommend mixers is like the thing to try. It might be. Everyone is different. Maybe you go to a mixer and you're like, I'm so bored. Who are these people? They're all really annoying. Like, I don't want to be here. But you go to a party and you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is amazing. So think about like what you feel like you might be interested. Like if you know you really, or you think you might like a queer party, try a queer party. If you think you might like a bimbo party, I don't know. I don't even know if those exist. Try a bimbo party. There's all sorts of things. Those probably exist. Everything exists.
I guess it's a matter of trying and really understanding what you're looking for. If you want to know the people you're with, probably a mixer. But if you want to like a completely random party that no one knows you don't want to know anyone, you don't want to see anyone later, so probably just go to a party, see. And again, you don't have to engage in anything if you don't feel comfortable, which I think is amazing and is great, a way to like to feel comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Are they usually like paid, or are there free options for?
They're usually money, unless you like know people in a group, or like you're like a more private aspect, which is also sometimes where you might end up on like FetLife, going to parties where you don't know people. It might not be exactly the vibe. It might be, but like for me, like that wouldn't be the vibe. Sometimes you can like volunteer at a party. You could do like a bar shift, like work the bar for them for an hour or two. Depends on the party. You can sometimes be a guardian. Sometimes the guardians are like a paid position, but usually you have to do like training or have been in the scene for a while. You can't just be like, hi, I'm new here. Can I be a guardian? No, you can't do that. But sometimes you can help with setup for a party, like breakdown. Sometimes breakdown positions are paid because it's like 4 a.m. or whatever the time is. So there's like options, but usually a good party is going to cost money.
Like around 100 or
It
20 or
depends.
200 or something.
It could be $20. I mean, less so these days. Probably the cheapest you can get a ticket to a party is like $30 or $40. Um, and there are some parties that could cost like I don't know really go to those kind of parties, but there's parties that cost like $500.
Okay.
Or some more. Some do weird things, but like a guy can buy a ticket, but it gives them a couple. Or anyone can buy a ticket, but it will have to come as a couple. Gender is unclear on those parties sometimes. Some parties do like gendered pricing, which is like different price tickets for people of different genders, which can sometimes be problematic. So it might be like women are $20 and guys are 60 or something.
I can see how it can be
It could be
problematic.
problematic because then like the guys are coming and maybe they expect like, oh well, I paid $60 and the women here are just here to fuck or something, whatever. I don't know. Personally, I don't think gender pricing is cool. Even though yes, I'd love to pay less for a party, but you want to keep the vibe good and safe and all that. So yeah, but usually for like a good Saturday night or Friday night party, it's probably going to be between 30 and $150 depending if it yeah, around that. Yeah. Usually a party has like one or two big things a month, maybe once a season or once every 2 months. So you just find out what works for you, keep track of what's happening with your schedule, and go to those things. Something like a New Year's party, if it's a play party, is going to cost more, but that's like how it works for everything too. Like a Halloween party is going to cost more. If you go to a party on a Thursday, it's probably going to be cheaper than a Saturday party. So that kind of dynamic, the way things are in like the regular world, is also how it's going to be in the kink world. Under capitalism, we live in a capitalist society. So
Makes sense. So you mentioned the thing with gender pricing, and I wanted to ask about the parties. So I assume that there are different parties and different but generally, do these parties separate like preferences, or is anyone can come with any preference or gender?
It all depends on the party. Like there might be a party that's just for trans women. There might be a party that's just for cis queer men. There might be a party that's for anyone but is like more heterosexual bend to the party. There might be a party for like everyone who's a woman or was a woman, or I don't want to get into too much complicated gender stuff. But yeah, it depends on the party. And it would be clear from when you're reading the description what kind of event it is. And if you're not sure, you can always ask someone, talk to someone about it. Yeah.
Okay. That's good advice. Always read the details and
yeah, always. That's a life thing. Always read the details.
For sure. So I'll go a little bit also to a personal question, if you don't mind. But so you're open about being polyamorous,
like do my parents know? You mean, or like something like that?
I mean,
like
if it's
in
if you're in life, yes, do your parents know?
Yeah, my parents do know. But so it's like more. Yeah, I'm pretty open. I mean, I didn't use like my full real legal name on this radio channel. But like, you can find my name out pretty easily. It's not like a secret. I don't like always say at work like right away like I'm queer and poly and this and that. But usually when you get to know like someone in a work setting, I would probably tell them to some extent. Just because like if you're somewhere a lot, like you're gonna be sharing aspects of your life. I might not say like, oh yeah, I went to this play party on Saturday night, but like I might mention like I have a partner, I have this, like whatever. So generally I'm open. Yeah, generally.
Have you ever experienced any negative response or anything that you kind of feel uncomfortable after sharing?
I mean, I'm sure. I try not to think about what those things are. Um, when I'm coming back to the longest I lived outside of New York, which is not really important for this show because this show is specifically about New York, and I only ever lived outside of New York for 3 months.
Oh, that's fine. You can talk
But
about it. But like,
it doesn't really relate because I didn't know I was like poly yet at the time, or in the. I mean, I knew I was kinky, but I didn't know. I hadn't found play parties. And in air quotes, I don't even know what I'm looking at if I'm air quoting for the radio. Air quote. Yeah. So I had like a terrible, terrible, mean employer when I was in Seoul, and he was like very judgmental of that. Like the bag I had was not a bag a teacher would have, and like this, and a teacher wouldn't be doing this, and like, he didn't even like know anything. He was like, a teacher wouldn't smoke cigarettes, or so it. I don't know. I'm just thinking about that, but this doesn't really answer your question.
no, it is in a way because some people are very like they're not open minded about those things. They think that the way that they live, that's the right way, and
Right.
whoever lives differently, that's not acceptable.
Exactly.
And the reason that I'm asking is because I do know that there's a lot of talk around that, and a lot of people that are either feel ashamed or afraid or scared. And if you have any advice to how to go about it, I know New York is pretty more like it's more open
Right.
to different, people. Just it's more accepting, and a lot of people come to New York because their
Exactly.
country or their city is not
Right.
accepting. But I'm sure that even in New York, there are people who are still very old-fashioned.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they exist. Sometimes I intersect with them a little bit, but I try to surround myself with people that are open and understanding, and even if they don't like aren't in that exact flavor of being, like they're not going to be like, "Oh my God, you went to a play party?" Like, "Ew, I can't talk to you." Like I just wouldn't surround myself with people like that. But there's also debate about like how open people should be, can be in work. I think just also depends on the culture of your workplace, the people you're with, but just you don't have to give like the exact details of everything, but you can give hints and see what like feels safe to talk about and what doesn't. Um, Sometimes like teachers feel like they can't talk about certain things. Well, obviously you couldn't talk about that, yeah, depending on the age you're teaching. But if you're teaching in like a college or university, it's debatable. Yeah, it's a tricky question. But I personally feel like the more people talk about things with more people, the easier things get for everyone across the board. So, like, maybe your next door neighbor or the neighbor 3 doors down never heard of polyamory, and then you mention something, and then 5 times later, when they hear about it, they're like, "Oh, that actually sounds like kind of cool. Like, I don't want to try it, but good for them." So it's kind of like a chain effect. That's not exactly the word I'm looking for. But the more
I know
people
what you
are,
mean.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
butterfly effect, sort of, but not that either. But the more people are on it, and I don't think it's just for kink or polyamory or queerness or trans or whatever, or even anything sexual or gender related or kink related. It could be anything. The more we are open,
Yeah.
talk about things like addiction or like therapy or traumas or really anything. I think the better the world gets and people can feel less alone and you can connect with people, like doing things like your radio show and talking and being honest and open. I think it really goes a long way.
I think it's definitely huge aspect of understanding different people. And the thing is, comparing, like I've traveled around the world a lot, and there are countries and small towns, around the world that they don't have queer people. They don't have gay people, not because they don't have gay people,
Right,
but
of
because
course, they're
people are
still there.
so terrified to come out, right? Or they don't have black people at all. And or there are so many different things, and they never seen that. So whenever you mention the topic, it's so terrifying to them. But which, initially that's fine. If you never seen something, it's okay that you don't understand it. But the problem is when you are not open to learning about that, and you're not open to accept that it's, you maybe you don't have to understand, but accept it because it exists and it's there. And the way that you're living doesn't mean that this is how everyone lives their life, right? And I find it sometimes very hard to explain to people if I talk to people, maybe like a little bit older people or people that come from these areas that they never experienced anything like that, and they never heard of that. So to them, it's like it's completely whack, it's completely different, and I find it hard to talk to them and to explain to them how important it is to listen and to learn and to understand. And I think that's why I love also New York City so much, because there is everything here. Like it's such an amazing place to learn about different cultures, different personalities, different like everything, honestly, nationalities, religions, just generally people, and
Totally.
I learned a lot about so many different cultures just living in New York, because I probably have friends from all cultures. And it's so amazing because you get to see, I was born in a really small city in Russia. Again, no queer people, no black people, no,
God.
like it's a very, small town. And if I would have stayed there, I would never experience anything that I'm experiencing right now. And coming, well, I also lived in Israel, which is also very like mixed, and you get to know a lot of people. And then I went to LA, I lived in Germany, many, many places. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to really like get to know everything. And well, not everything, I can know everything, but I'm always like,
Try.
yeah, I'm trying, to get to know all these different aspects of freaking humanity, which is amazing. So yeah, if you come to New York and you want to explore, it's definitely the best city to do that.
I love that what you're saying about being open. I think that's a general trait, a positive thing for people to have. So even if like you disagree with something, or you've never heard of something, or you're opposed to something, or it feels weird or wrong, maybe just listen for like a minute, or like put like a timer in your brain, and then if it's not for you, like you don't have to keep listening. You can just be like, that's not for me. But I don't know. There's a million ways to do a million things, but
Yeah.
just general open mindedness. One of the like mixer group things is actually like I wasn't like, naming names of anything, but it has the word open in its name, and it just describes itself as like being for people who are open, and that could mean anything. It could mean like open to polyamory. It could mean having open relationships. It could mean being open minded. It could be a lot of things. So I think open is a general plus.
And I think it helps a lot because the more people speak up and talk about it, the more people feel comfortable to, to express themselves as well. Because again, if we're coming to these small towns or like these countries that are not accepting anything but the norm, quote unquote, right? And there's one person that they're gay or they're queer or whatever it is that they are, but it's not like it doesn't fit the norm, they probably won't speak up because it's fucking terrifying.
Exactly.
So
But
the
if they
more
hear someone
people,
else-
exactly. So when you hear at least one person, and you have this other person that is like you or also going against the norm, it's like it's more likely that you're gonna open up and actually experience that too. So I think it's so important speaking out because even if I go a few years back, it's all the things that we have right now, whether it's gender issues or being open about the things that we're talking about, like polyamory and the kink scene. And if we're talking about, I had something else in mind and I completely escaped my mind, but it was like all these things, like it wasn't that open just a few years ago. And now the more we talk about it, the more people feel comfortable to be themselves and to explore other things and even to try, even if like just to try and then to see, okay, that's not for me, but like I tried them. I like you said, open, right? You go there and you're like, okay, let me try. Maybe I want to explore that. I think it's important. Oh yeah, therapy. That's what I wanted to say.
yeah.
So if
Right,
you
talking about therapy, trauma,
therapy, yeah. So if you go a few years back, and in certain culture, it's still like unacceptable to go to therapy, especially for men, right? Because it's like, ugh, no. But the more people are open about it and talk about it, it's such a normal thing to do.
Right.
But I remember a few years back, it was like going to therapy. It's considered you're like having a breakdown or issue or like
Right. What's wrong with you? Why are you
exactly
going to therapy?
right.
It's like
It's like we all need therapy. Like let's
therapy
face it,
can help anyone,
right?
everyone.
Like we all need it. We all dealing with stress and I think the general thing is like we're humans, we're social. we get affected by each other. We get, like we are influenced by each other, and that's causes like stress and just relationships in general, whether you go to school or to work, or because you're not locked in your room just by you, like, and if you are, you should go to therapy for sure. But any person in any position, in any job, in any age, like after a certain age, I think like we experience stress all the time, and we need to learn how to cope with that. And because shit's gonna happen, this is just life. But but therapy kind of helps you cope with that. And I think communities as well, because you mentioned communities, and even if you don't know your scene yet or what you want, or you feel like you're a little, like unfamiliar with that, just to find your community. And with the things that you said, like go in and look for specific keywords or, specific pages on Instagram, to find your community, to understand that you're not alone. Because when you understand you're not alone, that's when it gets easier, because you're not the only one anymore. And in New York, you're definitely not the only one. Whatever you can think of, whatever you think, oh, I'm the only one. No, you're not. You're never the only one.
Yeah, when I was earlier, like that bimbo party, I just like made up a random thing in my head. I don't know if it exists, but I'm sure if I look it up, it's going to exist somewhere. Anything you can think of exists, and we're in New York, so there's probably some version of it here.
Yeah.
So you're not alone. No one's alone. Just find your people and be open and listen and try to find commonality with others, even if you think they're really different than you, because you never know.
I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned you also you work in the education system, right? Have you ever felt like a certain type of, I don't know if like you can answer that really, but I will ask anyway. If you can, like a certain type of discrimination because of that, unacceptance, or like job wise, career wise.
Yeah, I don't really know for myself, but I have heard like teacher friends be like, oh yeah, I can't have a kinky Instagram because what if my students find it or something. So I don't know specifically about like discrimination, although I'm sure it probably does happen somewhere or something. I think it just depends on the field and the specific job you have and the specific type of person you are and what you're trying to do. So depends.
I'm curious about that because, again, because New York is very open, and it's like you technically can't discriminate a person because of their gender or sexual.
Right, but technically, like kink and poly isn't like a protected class. It's not like gender.
What about like queerness?
Yeah, being queer, you're safe.
Yeah.
Like, for now.
Okay.
There's always shifting things around that.
Okay.
It's New York. I just ripped my hair out at that thought of like, oh my God, what rights are they going to take away next? So, I don't know.
Hopefully none.
Hopefully the world stays open and safe and good for as many people as possible.
Yeah, I really hope so. I really think generally what I think is that every person have the right to live their lives the way they want, as long as they're not hurting anyone. And the way that a person lives their life, whether it's the gender they are or the sexual orientation or whatever they do in their own private time, as long as it's not killing anyone, I think everyone is allowed to do what they want, right? And
or even their weird politics, even if it's the opposite of what I think, as long as they're not hurting anyone. Which is where it sometimes gets tricky, though, because sometimes people's politics is leading to harm in the world, and it's a huge issue that we clearly can't solve at the end of this talk. But
definitely politics is complicated. I usually don't even go into that. Because it's something that you can talk like forever, right? It never ends. Everyone has their own views. It's very hard to see the other person's view and opinion regarding that, because we all grow up differently, we all raised differently, have our own opinions, have our different knowledge about certain things. So it's such a difficult argument. I never liked politics. I think it's dirty.
But I think even with politics or just anything, as I was saying earlier, again, just being open and listening to people, you might find you don't actually have as many differences as you thought you did with someone.
I think it's very important to listen to one another and to at least try to understand where the other person is coming from,
Yeah.
and have like a mature conversation about everything. Again, coming back to this topic, right? If you're completely unfamiliar with kink or polyamory and you think, what, 2 partners, 3 partners, 4 partners, this is what? No, I never heard of such thing. If you listen, if you have a conversation, again, what you think is one thing.
Right.
But you were raised differently. You grew up on different, with different parents in different life, different circumstances, and you don't know. It's like you say, like, oh, walk 1 mile in a person's shoes, right? Like you can't because you didn't live what they live. You didn't experience what they experienced. So the least you can do is to listen and to understand. Again, in the end of the conversation, maybe we won't agree. Maybe I'll tell
Right,
you,
maybe
what?
not.
I'll stick to one partner. It's still, I don't know. It's not cool. That's not for you. But you listen and you understand it better. And you denying it is not going to help anyone. It's just, you don't have to do it. Nobody's forcing you, but denying it or disrespecting it or, it's just why? Just,
Yeah.
don't be a hater. This just doesn't hurt you in any way. So yeah, that's like my policy. Just live your life, let others live their lives, be respectful to opinions, and have a normal conversation.
100%.
I wanted to ask you. We still have some time, so I wanted to ask you if there's anything that I did not ask you that you wanted to share and mention.
I can think something that just came up when you were talking, like having a conversation, listening. Maybe we disagree at the end of the conversation, the 2 people, and maybe more than one partner is not for me, whatever. I was thinking about that. Probably no one's going to like change their mind about polyamory or non-monogamy in like one conversation, which I know you were just talking, but I just want to keep that in mind for listeners. And we were talking about going to mixers or munches or party to learn more, but you can also do a lot of your research at home as well. You can look at Instagram pages, you can read real books, you can listen to podcasts, you can watch documentaries. There's a million ways to inform yourself. So you can do some exploring before you go into physical spaces, to see if it resonates at all. Maybe you're like, this definitely is not for me. Or maybe you get really excited by it, you want to learn more. But I was also thinking about that in terms of when talking to people and being open. Maybe also it depends. Maybe not sometimes bombarding people with questions. Like I know sometimes
Like I'm doing right now.
Well, we're doing an interview. It's okay. It's allowed. It's fun. It's good here. Like, I signed up to do this. Like you sign up. We know what we're getting into. Consent. As long as you have consent to do things, you can do things. But I guess anyone listening to this probably is a little more open minded than some people. But if you're talking to someone, don't immediately be like, oh my God, how many people do you have sex with, or how many partners do you have, or what is the
that's a little intruding.
Yeah, exactly. So just because someone is open doesn't mean they are going to answer every question you have.
Yeah, and notice I didn't ask anything that
right.
Make you feel somehow uncomfortable, because I don't think this conversation about how many sexual partners, right? It's not. That's
right.
not. That's irrelevant. That if you want to have 2, you can have 2. If you want to have 1, if you want to have 100, that's on you. That right. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out. I think it's important. I think regarding any topic actually in life, I hate when people bombard me with questions. It's and it starts feeling like an interrogation, an invasion of privacy, especially if it's not like your friend and it's a person you just met and you tell them something about you and they're like, oh, it's like, chill. Like, let's not get into my pants yet. Like there's some things that, you can't ask a person that you don't know, certain details that you don't like. And I feel like some people don't have the realization of where this boundary stands.
Yeah, I feel that.
So it's, if you don't know what's the social boundary, go read and explore about that, because
that's why I was bringing up books too,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
understanding social boundaries is one of the most important things you can learn as a human. Because when my boundaries are being crossed, that's a very uncomfortable feeling, and I automatically put a blockage. I put a blockage, and it's very hard to reach me after that if you already crossed that boundary, because I will take 10 steps back and put a wall between us because you're invading my privacy. So I think that's super important. And I think what you said, especially because when a person is being open about themselves to a certain point, right, about their whatever it is, their sexuality, their gender, their whatever it is, people tend to think, oh, they're open, so let me ask. They're openly gay, so let me ask them everything about like that. That no, there's a line that you need to understand. And so thank you for pointing this out.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I would say, like, generally follow the person who's sharing a vulnerable thing's lead. Like, don't take it further than where they're taking it. The conversation, I think, is a good piece
Unless
of
you
advice.
host a radio show and you can ask a lot of questions. But yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. I think it's important.
What advice would you have about that? About like knowing where social boundaries might lie in talking and versus interrogating?
I think, well, first of all, for a person who really doesn't know, definitely get some information, even online. If it's your first social event, your first, I don't know, you're moving from a small town to a huge town and you like don't know how to interact with people, definitely to read more about it. And I think it comes with experience. So if it's your first social event ever in life, just go explore. Just go listen to listen more. Always listen more than you talk. Let other people tell you what they want you to know. And if they telling you something and you have a follow-up question, that's okay. But be very, again, we all kind of have like a social understanding of what's private and what not. Like if I tell you I'm a musician, that's okay to ask me. Like, oh, you have music? Where can I live? Obviously, right? But if I tell you, oh, I'm married, you're not gonna be like, oh, really? Show me pictures of your partner. And how many times do you like? No, we all have this like social understanding. But if you really don't know, I would say just to listen more, to see how other people interact, and just go from there. Definitely not go into private. Just don't ask people what you don't want to be asked as well, right? If you don't feel comfortable answering certain questions, I'm sure that the other person is not comfortable as well, unless they're telling you openly, and that's fine, right? So definitely, I go to a lot of social events, to a lot of business conferences. The dialogue between a social event and a business conference is very different, but the more I go, the more I explore, the more I learn how. And I wasn't like perfect from the first time, like I wasn't invading anyone's privacy, but you kind of like learn how to lead the conversation, how to interact with the person the proper way. So going to all these events, obviously you get a little bit more knowledge and experience. So yeah, definitely. That would be, I guess, my long answer to my advice. But yeah, let's see, we are about to end the show very soon. Something that I wanted to mention. Oh, you want to?
I just want to say, like, I
talk,
didn't
please.
even touch like a briefest little bit of all the important stuff, and I won't be able to do it all now. So just do your research. If you're new to New York,
You still have like at least 10 minutes. If you want to mention, please do.
Fuck. I just do your research. Read books, or whatever way you like to learn. Podcasts, Instagrams, whatever the thing is for you. That's all. That's all I have right now for us about that. Do your research, and don't take like any one. Don't take any one thing as like the all encompassing advice. Like just because you listen to one podcast, don't be like, oh well, I listened to that podcast about polyamory and now I know. Like you don't. No one really knows anything ultimately, and like hearing something secondhand, third hand, fourth hand, even less. So just take everything with a grain of salt. Also,
I think now there's a lot of resources. Like even if you don't read books, right? Let's say you don't read books.
I personally think you should, but
yeah, you should. But if you don't, like, there are a lot of online forums. There's so much information online that you can find to explore more about this topic. So yeah, I mean, it's very hard to cover this entire topic in 1 hour for sure.
And I thought I was going to talk about like specific places like that I recommend, but I don't. I just feel like kind of weird like recommending some over others, and then I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Well, if you later decide that you still want to recommend specific places or certain places, or you have like maybe some books you want to recommend or resources, you can send them to me, because later on the YouTube channel, those of you who are going to be watching YouTube, everything is going to be down below in the link section, where I always put resources and helpful links from our guests. So you can, whatever you decide to send, any information or resources or something you think people should read or explore, please send it over and I'll just attach it, and then you can read and explore. Yeah. Before I forget, you guys.
I know. Did you remember?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. I was gonna. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually remember, because it's very important to me, and I think it's been a while, because I shortened the show since like in the last 2 months since I started my school again. I shortened the show from 2 hours to 1 hour, and I used to give you like the national days, the national holidays, and like the recommendations and everything, and read you poems and stuff like that. But now I don't do it anymore because I don't have time. So, but this is very important. So this month is breast cancer awareness month, and this topic is super, super important to me, because I know people who survived breast cancer, and the awareness comes, like the awareness just saves life, because if you go and check yourself constantly, you can prevent that from happening. And I know people who caught it on early stages, and thankfully they were able to remove that on time, and living happily ever after, right? But don't neglect that. It's a very important topic. There is a reason it's an awareness month. It's there's awareness with that. I think we mentioned it also in June. There was an awareness day for breast cancer survivors. So yeah, definitely. It's unfortunately it's kind of common on the common side, and it's very hard to see in the beginning, and don't get to a stage when it's already too late. So please, please, please go check yourself all the time. If you don't want to go to a doctor, you can check it yourself. There are videos on YouTube that you can check if for any lumps or for any things like that. But early detection really, really gonna save lives. So please, 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 I encourage you to do that. That's what I wanted to say. It was really, really important for me to mention.
Yay.
Thank you. Well, we're gonna end. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing this. Me. Yes, and answering all my bombarding questions.
No, they were great. There weren't any bombarding questions. I still feel bad about not answering that one of those first questions. Like, how did you get here, and how did you know you wanted to be here? I was like, that's way too complicated.
Yeah, maybe
save that question for later.
Yeah,
that was like a deep one. That like
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever wanted to share, you can. Write pointers and we'll post about it, because I think it's a question that like it's interesting for people to see like the process of like how do you understand that, how do you realize that this is what you want to try do, and how does this happen, like I talked about the sense of community and not feeling alone. I'm sure that there are some people who are still like in the dark about all this, so it helps to hear stories and whatever you're comfortable to share. So I hope, we'll find time and way for you to share what you're comfortable with. But thank you so much. And I will see you next Wednesday with another exciting guest. And it's going to be fun. And thank you for watching, and happy Wednesday.
Bye.